Before we start our story, a word from our sponsor.
Ladies and gentlemen, gather around for the miracle of the modern frontier. Dr. J.J. Calhoun's Magic Moon Hair Tonic.
Step right up. Are you bald, bashful, squeaky, rusty, dusty, or emotionally inconvenient? Then you need Magic Moon.
Guaranteed to grow hair, shine boots, loosen wagon wheels, and remove barnacles from your personality.
Before Magic Moon, my head was smoother than a boiled egg. Now, I've got hair, confidence, and a small birdie nesting in my ear.
That's vitality, friend.
Rub it on your scalp for handsome locks. Rub it on your boots for a Sunday shine. Rub it on wagon wheels for a smoother ride.
I rubbed some on my mule.
What happened?
Now he has sideburns and gives legal counsel.
Magic Moon Hair Tonic, available from hucksters throughout the wild, wild west, or wherever fine remedies, arsenic complexion patches, and suspicious bottles are sold.
Dr. J.J. Calhoun's Magic Moon Hair Tonic. If it doesn't work, you probably didn't believe hard enough.
Yeehaw!
Under the Diehard Brand by L. Ron Hubbard. The night rider was nervous. It was with considerable effort that he kept his voice easy and assured as he sang. 2,000 longhorns bedded down on the strange range country of Montana moved restively, still upset after the dangerous crossing of the Missouri that day. The mutter of thunder growled across the sky. Bunched up clouds shot nervously across the face of the moon. The weary young trailhead knew there would be trouble before morning.
Sit down, little cows, and rest your tails, and forget all about them dusty trails. Now if you played Pharaoh or had a rival to your gal, your worries would be...
He stopped suddenly and looked questioningly at the ridge to the south. Sheet lightning silhouetted a rider up there. The trailhand rode a short distance to wave the strange horseman off from the nervous herd. The rider was coming slowly down the slope, being very careful to ride easily and quietly. The trailhand advanced.
Howdy, stranger. Step light. These bovines is nervous wrecks after our crossing today.
He studied the other, but asked no questions. He saw that the horse was travel-worn and knew from the other's rig and clothes that he had come through from Texas, which is a long jump.
Sure, but they might be very sparing of signposts, and I don't savvy this country none. Where's Wolf River?
The trailhand looked more closely and saw that the stranger was young, around 18, and from the looks of him hadn't eaten very regularly of late.
The wagon's over to your right, stranger. Better go over and get down. We're short-handed and might be able to help you along.
Thanks, but I've been coming from such a hell of a while that I'm getting anxious to see the target. You know Wolf River?
Some.
Know if I can find Diehard Thompson there?
Sure you can. Last I hear of him, he's sheriff.
Getting along all right?
Getting along in age. Was a time when strong men fainted at the mention of that name. But the old boy's aging up pretty bad. One of these days, somebody is going to get nerve enough to find out if he's as bulletproof as he says to be. He's slipping. There's plenty of citizens...
Wait a minute. You're talking about my dad.
Hell! No offense, I hope. I didn't know Diehard ever stopped practicing the draw long enough to have a kid. Well, Cookie'll fix you up if you drop over. You be plumb welcome to drift north with us, Thompson.
The youngster shifted wearily in his saddle, and the trailhand noticed the absence of all weapons.
Guess I'll be swinging on if you'll wise me up.
Sure. Keep the pole star on your left a little. Wolf River's about 60 miles, and if you miss it, you'll fall over the G.N. tracks.
Much obliged. Be seeing you.
The kid started a wide circle around the herd, picking his way by the flare of lightning. He was very thoughtful, and a frown wrinkled up his tired face. He traveled until he reached the other side of the bed when, behind him, he heard the far-off crack of a shot almost blotted out by the summer thunder. He turned in his saddle and looked back. He could see the whole amphitheater from where he sat. The cattle had started up, looking about, beginning to walk nervously in small circles. He knew one rider could not hold that herd now, and he reined around, intending to go back and be of what help he could. Another shot made a thin red line on the ridge across. The kid saw the trail hand as lightning fanned across the horizon. The man was laying on his quirt, racing away from the evident ambush toward the far-off chuck wagon, going for help. An instant later, half a dozen horsemen rose magically on the rim above the trail, as black and stiff as though they had been cut from cardboard. A heavy-set fellow on a chunky horse spurred down to meet the puncher. Orange flames spat. Lightning flared. The puncher leaned backwards in his saddle. Hands thrown up, he vanished, and his horse plunged on. An instant later, the others on the ridge started down, firing into the air, shouting. The herd was ready to go. With a roll which shook the earth, 2,000 longhorns began to stampede. The cracking shots were blotted out in the crash of horns against horns. The riders were swallowed up in the geysering black dust. The kid dug spur toward the unseen chuck wagon, courting his weary horse, but his message was not needed. The fire was kicked together and tired men were struggling up, grabbing saddles and rifles. Cattle were pouring over the far rim, bawling in terror, a seething cloud of madness on its express journey to nowhere. The kid reached the spot where the riders had appeared first. Below him, one of the riders had reined in and dismounted beside the dead trail hand. The rider turned the body over with his foot. The arms flopped outward. Above the booming storm of the departing stampede, the kid heard a resonant, unearthly, sad voice say,
God rest your soul, my man.
It was all one vast, scrambled nightmare to the kid. The man just below could not see the kid against the black rocks, and the kid, recovering reason in time, knew that it would be madness to show himself unarmed. The crew came boiling over the ridge. The mysterious rider had vanished completely. Suddenly, the kid realized his precarious position, himself unknown in a strange country. Lightning spread a yellow glare across the heavens. The kid spurred into the cover of the darkness. He looked back once as the sheet lightning flared again. Two days later, the kids sidled uncertainly down the boardwalk raised above the dust of Wolf River. It was morning, and the prairie sun was as warming as a drug. The denizens of the tough Montana cowtown were rising and stretching and grumbling along the street, wondering why they had thought they could hold that much on the night before. The kids spotted a squat red stone building over which dropped the sign, Jail, Sheriff's Office. He took a notch in his belt, straightened his battered Stetson, wiped the toes of his scuffed boots on the calf of each leg, and advanced somewhat in the manner of a man about to lunge off his horse to grab the horns of a streaking steer. He heard hoofbeats behind him, but he was much too preoccupied with his own presence to turn. The riders were coming slowly. The door to the office framed Diehard Thompson. He stepped from the sill to the walk and deliberately hooked his thumbs into his cartridge belt to survey the town with squinted, faded eyes. He looked in the kid's direction, but not at the kid. Diehard's eyes popped open, and he freed his hands, letting them swing down to the level of his lashed-down holsters. He took a deep breath. The kid thought he had already been recognized, forgetting for the moment that his father had not seen him since Diehard's departure from Texas 15 years before. The kid stopped. Diehard's voice was querulous and worried, but there was a hint of steel in it.
I thought I told you to stay clear of Wolf River.
The voice which sounded behind the kid from the street was very familiar. It was a pious, sad voice with all the ringing intonation which rightly belonged to the pulpit.
Are you starting that again, brother?
The kid backed up against the building and stared at the riders. There were 6 of them, and in the lead, Holy George Gates was sorrowfully sitting his horse. The man was like a raven in his black frock coat. His eyes were too black and too bright. His jaw was long.
It started weeks ago, and what I start, I finish. There's been a herd stampeded and a field hand killed. Where was you when that happened?
Holy George put both hands on his pommel and mournfully regarded Diehard.
It is most unseemly, brother, for you to accuse me without cause. You should know that we were delivering beef to Fort Belknap.
Whose beef?
Beef legally and ethically purchased. You forget I hold both the Army and railroad beef contracts.
No man can fill them and stay honest with the price you bid.
The riders sat very quietly, staring at Diehard. They were a range-toughened lot, dust-covered and unshaven. The one at Holy George's right, Anvil Borse, nudged Holy George.
What you playing with him for? You got the pull to do
Holy George shook his head.
The old poor fellow is suffering from delusions. Pay no attention, Anvil.
Diehard took a threatening step forward.
I'm suffering from what? If you're looking for a war gauge, I'm the man can give it to you. I ain't as old and slow as some people around here think I am. Ha, ha. And I told you to keep that ragtail bunch of hellions out of Wolf River, and I meant what I said.
Be careful. You forget your rheumatism, brother.
Diehard was shaking with rage, speechless. But Holy George turned his mount and his back to the sheriff and rode with his men down the street to Long Henry's place, where they dismounted and trooped in. A flat-faced and large-paunched man in somber civilian dress had been watching from the front of the Great Northern Hotel. He came waddling through the dust toward the sheriff's office.
Diehard,
Said Johnny Simmons severely.
you got to quit picking on Holy George Gates.
Diehard, like an old buffalo cornered by ravenous wolves, spun to face this new angle of attack.
Picking on him? Why, Jesus jumping Jupiter, you talk like he's still in his three-way pants. That murdering Wolverine would gut his mama if he thought she had a dime in the kitchen.
Now. You forget that as long as he deals through Wolf River, he's bringing money into the town.
Ha! What kind of money? He's been spilling so much blood to get it. It's a wonder that the Missouri don't turn pink.
Now, Diehard, you're getting short on temper. Maybe your rheumatism is hurting you this morning.
Damn my rheumatism. If you don't quit making me pull up short every time I try to get to the bottom of these raids and these killings, I'll go as loco as a strychnine wolf. You're just like the rest of these psalms singing businessmen. As long as you get your money, you don't care how many men get killed.
You're going too far. You forget who you're talking to.
I ain't likely to forget your smell.
Look here. You're so old you're being held together with baling wire. If you was any kind of a sheriff, you'd get out and really solve these murders, instead of picking on Holy George just because his boys get wild when they come to town.
Diehard's dust-colored mustache stuck straight out from rage.
You can't even handle this town. Maybe you was a great gunman once. That was once. Nobody has seen your jaw for 3 years. Every frontier criminal is heading for Wolf River just because of what they hear about the place being easy on them. We're bogged down to the hubs with vagrants and loafers. We're being stolen blind by petty thieves, and you won't do a thing about it. Unless you get busy here and now and clean up the riffraff of this town, I'll make it certain that you turn in your star. And lay off Holy George Gates.
Diehard's rage had reached its peak, and the fury of it had burned him out. He slumped suddenly, and Simmons, seeing the abrupt looseness of the shoulders, pressed on.
You can start in right away. And if you mean business, you'll have this town clear by night.
Simmons waddled back through the dust of Wolf River and disappeared into the musty depths of his brick bank. The kid still leaned against the side of the jail, looking at Diehard with hurt surprise on his face. Diehard was getting old. He was showing the effects of a life hazed with gun smoke. His face and eyes and mustache had all faded into a nondescript hue, a monotone of weariness. He looked very far from the man the West had once known as the most deadly lawman west of the Mississippi since the death of Wild Bill Hickok. But the kid had ridden all the way from Texas, and though he knew the moment was wrong, he stepped up the walk and confronted Diehard. Diehard became aware of him and looked him up and down with little interest. The kid did not make a very prepossessing picture. He was dusty and caked with dried mud. His neckerchief was tattered at the end like an old flag. The earth on his face was almost as thick as a plaster mask.
What the hell do you want?
The kid had forgotten many things. Diehard would not be likely to recognize his own son, whom he had last seen in a cradle. Diehard had been too deep in the living of his own life to keep any check on his people. Diehard was not thinking of his own boy. He thought he was still in Texas, pampered by his mother's parents, heir to a spread the size of an eastern state. The kid had a speech all planned. He had carefully schooled himself to say,
Father, I couldn't stand it down the panhandling. I've been 2 years to get to you.
The schooling was smothered by Diehard's brusque manner.
Well, just don't stand there gaping. This town is getting so damn filled up with punks, I can't even get through the streets. On your way.
But I've come to.
But if you gonna stay around Wolf River, get a job. If you ain't got a job by sundown, keep drifting.
Diehard turned and went into the office, leaving the kid standing forlorn and alone on the splintery boardwalk. And now, another word from our sponsor.
Friends, for some of us, morning on the frontier is no walk in the park. When trouble's already saddled up and death is staring me right in the eye, boy, am I glad I started my day with Diehard coffee. Guaranteed to provide that death-defying stare. Armed and dangerous outlaws don't stand a chance. Rattlesnakes run. Mom accepts my apology for missing Sunday dinner. Roasted dark, ground bold, and packed with enough frontier spirit to make an undertaker reconsider his profession. Perfect for cowboys, sheriffs, stagecoach drivers, and anyone who needs to look death in the eye before breakfast. Proving that a glare is as good as a gun. Ask your grocer for Diehard coffee wherever you purchase your sundries. Remember, Diehard coffee available in 50 and 100-pound bags for your convenience.
It took the kid a couple of hours to realize that Diehard Thompson had apparently forgotten that he had once christened a son Lee Beauregard Thompson. It required another hour for the kid to understand that the invincible Diehard had progressed into unhappy old age, with rheumatism stiffening his gun arm until he was afraid to draw and discover how slow that once lightning arm had become. Although he could not express it, even to himself, the kid felt that Diehard was putting up a brusque front to cover up a soul sick with weary realization that his day was done. Lee Beauregard wandered dustily across the street and into false-fronted Long Henry's palace. He was not sure why he went there, and he was certainly not looking for the trouble with which he unwittingly collided. He shut out the sunlight when he closed the door and paused, gazing through the smoke-blurred, fly-filled interior at Holy George Gates, who was piously trying his slim white fingers at an innocent game of faro. But gazing at Holy George was so much like watching a funeral that the kid grew depressed more than ever. He sidled up to the bar and stood staring at the dill pickle and aged cheese, which Long Henry carelessly called his free lunch. Even so, the meager display was tantalizing to a stomach grown a stranger to food and coupled with a pocket lined only with tobacco crumbs. The place was curiously noiseless. Cards slapped, men talked, but sound waves made small impressions on the smoky atmosphere. Only one voice could penetrate the blue fog. The kid cast his uneasy glance down along the ring-spotted mahogany and looked wonderingly at Anvil Borse. The man was wearing a blaring yellow shirt, much grimed with grease, and his boots were purple and white. The wide-brimmed, low-crowned Stetson was light tan, and the neckerchief was a wondrous green. Anvil Borse had a black beard, a week old, and a pair of obscene eyes. The kid had never seen a man so compactly built for battle. And as Holy George's foreman, the Russian had been getting plenty of that. The kid turned his attention back to Holy George at the faro table. Holy George was as emotionless as a coffin, win or lose. The waxy white of his features was marred only by a scar on his left cheek, a livid mark which had the appearance of a blotched brand. Raised in the tough panhandle and on the trail for 2 long years, the kid had seen many hardened characters, had embroiled his young self with many armor-plated fists, but he had never seen men more deadly or more contrasted than the Russian and Holy George. Anvil split the smoke with a boisterous laugh. One of the riders had said something which caught the full blast of Anvil's contempt.
Him?
Cried Anvil, waving his whiskey glass in an unsteady circle.
Him? No, he couldn't stand 10 seconds with Holy George. I admit that Diehard Thompson was plenty fast a long time ago, and he laid plenty of corpses under the bunch grass. But that was a long time ago. He's scared stiff somebody is going to force him into an even break. Sure he is. Has he done anything in the last 3 years? No. And is he going to do anything? No. Holy George is so fast with his hideout that he could beat his mirror reflection to the draw. Diehard wouldn't stand a chance, see?
Still,
Said the tipsy rider.
he was good once. Don't forget that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but he ain't no good now. He's got a yeller streak down his back so wide you could trail a herd down it. He's all drawn up inside like he ate persimmons that wasn't ripe. He's so yeller, I tell you.
The kid did not know how it happened. One minute the room was blue with smoke, and next it was painted red with the flame of his wrath. The kid had 180 pounds of muscle to back up his right fist, and he could use it on occasion. As the last yaller sounded, the kid was 2 feet from Anvil's right. He grabbed Anvil's shoulder and whirled him half around. The kid swung with everything he had and connected explosively with Anvil's stubby beard. The sound was like cracking a 2x4. Anvil's whiskey glass sailed unspilling straight up. It turned over at the top and streaked down, raining red-eye on Anvil's twitching form. Anvil sat up, blinking. He saw a tattered youngster looming above him, both fists clenched, grimy face set in a grin so awful that it would have done credit to an ogre. Anvil brought his fist down and shot himself erect in a trail of sparks when the kid struck a second time. Anvil spun as he went down. He upset a bright brass spittoon which went bowling musically off on a voyage across the dusty floor. The kid dived downward through the shocked silence, scooped Anvil's ivory-handled single-action army into his fist, and came up on the other side of the prostrate man. Anvil turned over with a soulful groan and found out how his 6-gun appeared from the underside. Suddenly, the kid was very weak in the knees. He leaned up against the bar and the gun dangled from his nerveless fingers, but he maintained an air of nonchalance as though he made a practice of going around poleaxing bigger and younger foremen. He knew he was in for it, and the memory of the night and the summer lightning was dancing vividly before his eyes. The trail hand's eyes had been so glassy, and Holy George's voice had been so deep. He stood there and grinned, and watched Holy George Gates get up and walked carefully toward him. And in tones which would have done credit to a tomb, Holy George said,
What's the idea, brother?
The kid was thinking, and now the thought arrived. He had to get out of this. He steadied his voice. He had been very close to shouting that no man could call his father yellow and get away with it. But hard on the heels of that, he remembered that he might have been seen that night on the prairie, and if they knew he was the son of Diehard Thompson, murder would be the least of their thoughts. Standing there with 5 riders ready to plug him and Holy George only waiting to hear his answer before the hideout came out blazing, the kid increased his grin, made it a go-to-hell affair.
I didn't think he was so tough. A guy like Holy George Gates needs a foreman that can take care of himself. I'm electing yours truly into the job, and if anybody has got any complaints, speak up and smoke up, because I ain't a man to argue.
Holy George knew courage when he saw it. He also thought he knew men. He supposed that he saw here a puncher who liked to fight better than a meal. The kid was young, but the West was full of youngsters who had acquired swift gun habits at a very early age. Holy George saw something else. Tough Anvil Boris was discredited with the men, and his crew needed a man who could hit harder and draw faster than any one of them. It was beneath Holy George's dignity to attend to the details of that job. Carefully and sadly, Holy George said,
Where are you from, kid?
I'm from nowhere and I'm on my way to no place, and I got a hankering to go fast while I'm on the trail.
You're from Texas, brother.
That's as close as nowhere as a man can get. Stay down!
This last to Anvil, who was feebly trying to sit up. The kid's spur roweled his chest and he sank back. Holy George looked around at the faces of his men. He saw that they were all staring at the kid with awed respect.
Brother, you have procured yourself a job of work. We ride at dusk. Keep your mouth shut. Use my credit for your clothes and guns.
The kid saved his thanks. He walked toward the door and Anvil sat up, got to his knees, and then stood up. There was a brooding storm gathering in his eyes, but he was saving it for a better time, at a better place. The kid turned back and sent the 6-gun scooting along the floor. It brought up against Anvil's foot, and he reached down and juggled it in his palm, watching the kids retreating back. The kid got outside and walked quickly up the walk. He passed the Great Northern Hotel and almost collided with Diehard.
You still around?
Yeah, I'm still around. Holy George Gates just hired me as his foreman, and I'm staying around.
Diehard's faded blue glance was wide with surprise. It softened and he scrubbed at his cheek.
What the devil, kid? You don't mean that.
Sure, I mean it.
Look here, Sonny. I didn't mean that kind of job. You don't get the idea. If you swing in with Gates, they'll be giving you a necktie party just as soon as they find out the truth. Listen to me, son. Don't hit the outlaw trail at your age, or you will wind up decorating a cottonwood tree. Look, I was pretty rough a little bit earlier, and I didn't mean it. I was kind of upset. Listen, if you swing wide of that bunch, I'll get you a job as a deputy.
Sorry,
Said the kid, walking off.
I got the job I want.
Diehard stood in the hot afternoon sunlight and watched the kid disappear into the general store. Wearily, Diehard turned and limped back toward the jail. And now, another word from our sponsor.
Gentlemen, in the West, a man is known by his horse, his handshake, and the structural integrity of his mustache. That's why men of consequence choose one-shot miracle mustache wax. One dab holds your whiskers firm through wind, rain, duels, sermons, and unsolicited advice. One-shot miracle mustache wax gives your mustache the stiffness, uniformity, and authority of a circuit judge. One shot is ideal for sheriffs, Villains, barbers, cattlemen, and uncles who point with their faces. So, don't let your mustache wander like a calf through an open gate. Tame it with one-shot miracle mustache wax. Remember one shot. When your mustache needs to stand its ground.
The following week, Holy George's outfit came back to Wolf River eating the dust of 1,000 bawling longhorns destined for the railroad gangs employed on the Continental Divide. Working ceaselessly, the men harassed the heaving brown sea into the holding pens, mustangs dashing back and forth to close up the stragglers. The kid looked very different than he had on his first arrival in the town. His hat was new and stiff, and his boots were as bright as his silver spurs. His buckskin shirt and chaps were spotless. Riding straight up, he made a handsome picture. The kid saw Diehard. The old man was limping down toward the den of the pens, shoulders hunched as though he was cold. He glanced up as the kid passed him, but neither spoke. The cattle were all in now, and Holy George's sweaty riders were drawing back, anticipating a day and night in Long Henry's place and the high society of the Bird Cage Opera, 50 girls, 50. Sitting aloof and solemn, Holy George looked quietly on. The kid rode up beside him, on the side where Holy George wore his blotched brand. Johnny Simmons rode up, his stomach dented by his pommel, respectfully saluting Holy George.
You got 1,000 head there?
Exactly 1,000.
They told me to pay you now. You can leave it in my bank if you like.
I need a few dollars to pay off the boys.
Come on over and have a drink, and I'll get it for you.
All right, brother.
The two started ahead and then stopped. Diehard Thompson was standing resolutely in their path, faded eyes surveying them.
What's the matter with you?
It don't take a telescope to see them blotched brands on them cattle going down the street. That steer that just went down the street was a mill iron if I ever seen one.
Get out of the way, you old fool.
I ain't moving.
Brother, I told you once before that your interference is not welcome. And to that, I'll add that unless you can produce one single proof, you'd better keep still. You're going on slanderous guesses, and I'm not at all pleased.
I don't care whether you're pleased or not. I'm telling you for the last time to get out of Wolf River and the county and stay out. If I ever see your face here in this place again, it's going to be gun smoke.
The kid, some distance away, tensely sat his buckskin. He detected a slow, cruel pleasure creeping into Holy George's face. The kid looked at his father. Diehard was not backing down. The kid realized what this was costing the old man. For one last time, he was going to match his old reputation against a faster gun. Holy George straightened up. His ugly mouth was drawn down at the corners and the scar, and his face was purple.
You're asking for it, brother. Make it an even break.
For an instant, Diehard hesitated. His arm was almost paralyzed by rheumatism, but he showed no fear. In earlier years, too many men had gone down before him. Diehard made a pass at his holster. He was slow. Holy George had not seemed to move. Before Diehard had touched Walnut, Holy George's short gun was centered on the sheriff's chest. Only one missing button, marked by its loose threads on the frocked coat, showed the passage of Holy George's hand. Diehard was abruptly motionless, staring upward at the hideout's muzzle, momentarily expecting the impact of the killing shot. But Holy George was not as kind as that. He had shown Wolf River that the old man was through. That was worse than killing.
Now turn around and amble up the street. Let's not see any more of you while I'm in Wolf River.
But the old man was too stunned to move. He flexed his stiff fingers as though to prove that they were empty of a gun. He could not believe that this thing had happened to him, that now he would be the butt of Wolf River's contempt. Simmons' high, wheezing voice cut through the silence.
Damn you, Diehard! You've gone too far, and now see what you've done? Damn you, get out of my sight! As soon as Charlie Osmond gets back from Great Falls, we'll have a meeting that'll show you where you stand.
Anvil and the riders guffawed uproariously behind Holy George. Diehard slumped, turning painfully. He shuffled up the street toward his office, head down. The kid did all he could to retain his fury. The raucous laughter of Holy George's hands was hard for him to bear. But the kid was no fool. He sat his buckskin quietly and watched his father out of sight. Seven punchers and Holy George Gates raced along the rough wagon trail which led into the heart of the Circle C Range, 8 scudding storm clouds. The kid rode on Holy George's right. From time to time he glanced at the grisly silhouette beside him and then back at the onrushing black blur which was Anvil Bourse. Day by day, Anvil had grown more and more bold, increasingly surly to the kid. More than once the kid had seen Anvil's hand resting upon the butt of the ivory-handled single-action army, while the man's cloudy black glare studied for a target. But Anvil did not want an even break. He was waiting, the kid knew, for the red turmoil of a fight in darkness, and they rode now toward just such a scene. The army needed beef, and the contract belonged to Holy George. The Circle C had just received a trail herd from the south, and Holy George had spent the day in his cabin studying out the geometry of brands until he had discovered how to change the road brand, Lazy T, into his own Cross G, from which had come his nickname. They came to a fork in the road and Holy George reined, suddenly bunching them up.
Which way? The right?
No, I've got him spotted over the rise there along the creek bottom.
Good. Kid, take a man with you and swing wide to the left, get in position so that you can turn the point down this way when they start pouring up out of the bed ground. We'll swing right and start them. Understand?
Sure.
I'll go with him.
Holy George looked at Anvil and then shrugged.
All right, brother, but don't botch this.
I ain't going to botch nothing. Not this time I ain't.
The kid started off and Anvil rode up beside him. They had nothing to say to each other, but occasionally as they rode slowly forward, they caught each other's eyes and held for an instant. The kid was watching Anvil in the moonlight, noting the sign of the anvil the man had branded into his tan sombrero band, noting also the identical mark on the butt of the ivory-handled 6-gun. Anvil was vain about such things. They proceeded until they could look down into the dark shadows of the creek bottom. Cottonwoods were masking the herd there, but the click of horn against horn and the occasional scrape of a hoof on rock came to them plainly enough.
This is the place,
said the kid, pulling up.
Yeah, this is the place.
The undertone of menace in the man's voice made the kid look at him quickly. Anvil had betrayed more than he knew. They sat silently, waiting for the first shots. They both knew the plan. Stampede the herd out into the prairie, keep the main body of it moving at a run, let it slow down gradually, and then larrup it into the fastnesses of the Little Rockies, where the work of changing brands could be done without interruption. It took Holy George some time to get all the way around. The terrain was rough and silence had to be maintained. The trail crew would still be on guard because of the repeated raidings in other quarters of the range.
They're taking their time,
observed the kid. Anvil had his palm on the butt of his 6-gun. He was staring fixedly at the kid's heart. Anvil was waiting for the first shots from the other side.
You're acting spooky.
What of it?
The kid shifted his weight in the saddle and leather creaked. He had a sudden idea and he glanced across the dark bottoms.
You've been waiting for a long time to get square with me.
Yeah? What of it?
Nothing of it. Except, I think you're too yellow to try anything.
What?
I said, a white-livered skunk like yourself could only get a man in the back.
Anvil made an effort to control himself. He felt that he was being driven into something.
You've been waiting for a chance like this. Your palms are itching to be jarred, but you ain't got the nerve. You're yella straight through, mister, and you're so low down a coyote wouldn't gnaw on your carcass if he was starving to death. A buzzard wouldn't dirty his feet by lighting on
Why, you?
Anvil yanked at his gun. The kid dived suddenly to the left, walnut hard and warm in his palm. He fired across his buckskin's neck. The ribbon of flame lashed out to scorch Anvil's half-upraised gun hand. Anvil pulled the trigger, but his shot plowed earth. The ivory-handled gun slid out of his grasp, and he clawed at his pommel, coughing. His horse, startled by the deafening shot, was beginning to plunge. Anvil dropped to the sod and lay there, a dark outline against the darker ground. Instantly, other shots crashed across the bottoms and along the rim. Unseen cattle bawled with fright in the cottonwoods. Hooves rolled thunderously up the slope. Holy George jutted up out of the darkness and pulled up so hard his mount reared.
Who fired that shot?
But he was not waiting for the answer.
Get Anvil across his horse. And don't forget his hat. They're after us. Get going.
Holy George and his riders rolled swiftly by. The kid threw the corpse over the saddle and lashed it there with thongs. Then, carefully, he laid Anvil's hat on a rock with the gun beside it. He forked leather and tucked the mount's reins, spurring his own buckskin after the fleeing raiders. Behind him, the hastily assembling trail crew was starting to take up the chase, filling the night with shrill lead and courage bolstering yip-yays. The kid rode with the wind cold upon his young face, trying to tell himself that he had had to do it to keep from getting shot in the back. But even that could not overcome the shock of having killed a man, even break or not. Anvil's down-dangling hands swatted nervously at the grass as his running horse was hauled after the buckskin. And now, a word from our sponsors.
Prospectors, are you tired of digging holes and finding nothing but worms, regret, and old mule shoes? Then say howdy to genuine imitation gold nuggets. That's right, friends. Genuine imitation gold nuggets.
I sprinkled a few in my pan, and suddenly folks called me lucky. Before that, they didn't call me.
Perfect for impressing neighbors, relatives, investors, sweethearts, and any stranger that doesn't ask too many questions. Each nugget has the rich, golden appearance of success without the inconvenience of geology. Use them in mining pans, display jars, tall tales, or family reunions where your brother-in-law needs humbling.
Remember, they look like gold, they feel like gold, and cost almost less than gold.
Genuine imitation gold nuggets for the prospector who wants to impress company without doing any mining.
The next morning, the Cross-G outfit arose nervous and quarrelsome. The cluster of rough shacks which composed the nucleus of the growing spread was carefully protected by two vertical bluffs, and upon these, lookouts were perched surveying the spreading prairie beyond the river. The kid was sitting outside the bunkhouse cleaning his 6-gun, while Holy George paced like an enormous raven up and down the width of the corral. Holy George stopped.
I still can't see how Anvil could be such a fool.
A man's got to protect himself, and when it comes to being shot in the back, I object.
But you knew that shot would rouse the camp.
I told you that he was all set to plug me in the back, and when he drew, could I sit there and take his lead just to keep the camp asleep? It would have been Anvil's shot or mine.
Holy George resumed his pacing. He stopped at the far end of the boot tracks he had made and looked long and narrowly at the kid, his ugly mouth pulled down at the corners and the scar grown purple on his jaw. He came back.
If I thought you were here just to upset this outfit, I'd drill you like I would a tomato can, brother.
He stalked over to his own cabin and went inside. The kid kept on working at his 6-gun, the least possible tremor showing in his hand. A lookout stood up and waved his hat at the ranch. Another rider saw and ran to tell Holy George, who came forth to stand shading his eyes, staring up at the silhouette the scout made against the sky.
Rider coming!
They waited nervously until a lone horseman trotted into sight along the dry creek bed, which served the ranch as a road. Presently, they could see that it was Johnny Simmons. He must have ridden fast, as he was heaving and blowing as hard as his Mustang, and his fat paunch was going in and out like bellows. He got down alongside Holy George. Holy George turned to his rider.
Call in the lookouts!
The man went away on the run.
George, this is a hell of a thing. As soon as I heard it, I rode right out. This is going to put me in a terrible hole, and I ain't kidding you.
What's up?
A man from the Circle C rode into town about dawn to get Diehard, and as soon as I heard about it, I went right out and found them in the sheriff's office. I know it's all a mistake, but I want to make sure it don't spread. I got to think of my reputation, George.
Sure, brother. Sure you have.
This Circle C puncher had a 6-gun and a hat with him. The hat, and this is a fact, had an anvil branded on its band, and the 6-gun had the same design on it. Where's Anvil, Boris?
He left us yesterday. Quit because of the kid. Yeah. You heard him say he was going to quit, and he did. That's all I know about it.
Holy George shook his head despondently.
I thought you were removing Diehard Thompson from office.
Well, I had to wait until Charlie Osmond got back from the Great Falls, and he won't be there till tomorrow.
Brother, I appreciate this gesture of friendship. The false accusations of Thompson are likely to plant suspicion in the minds of the ranchers around here. And I realize, as you do, that in the finding of this hat and revolver implicates me. However, if a trial was...
I wouldn't like to see no trial. But Diehard is starting the wheels going, and there's to be a hearing tomorrow, and of course, nobody believes it except Diehard, and nobody will listen to anything he has to say, since you made a fool out of him. But still, I'd likely get dragged into this, and I can't afford it. My reputation is...
Of course. And with Diehard out of the way, the hearing won't have any witnesses except for a few Circle C boys. My boys all know that Anvil left me yesterday, and I'm shocked to hear that he turned rustler. Some of our own stock has been missing, too.
Well, I wish you could do something.
I think I can, brother. Won't you come in and have some dinner?
No. If you give me a fresh horse, I'll start right back away.
Certainly. Anything to oblige.
You will do something, won't you?
Yes, of course I will. Do you think I'd let my good name be dragged through the mud? You tell Diehard that I'm coming in to see him at 9 tonight and tell him I'll be healed. He wants his chance, and I'll give it to him.
Simmons mopped his brow with relief. A puncher was changing his saddle for him, and he started toward the corral.
If Diehard ain't there won't be much of a hearing. He's been bragging about how he'll nail you the next time he sees you anyway. He claims you got the drop on him by accident.
He mounted and gave Holy George a relieved grin and then rode swiftly down the creek bed and out of sight around the bluff. The kid had been sitting against the bunkhouse, taking it all in. He expected that something would be said to him about the hat and gun, but Holy George did not so much as glance in his direction as he re-entered his cabin. A short while later, one of the riders came out, whistling carelessly. The kid watched him disappear around the end of a shed and then turned back to watch Holy George's cabin. The coup was accomplished with ridiculous ease. Simultaneously, the two scouts appeared on either end of the bunkhouse, rifles pointed at the kid. Holy George walked sadly out of his cabin. The kid kept his hands away from his gun and stood carefully up.
Put him in there. If this is the way I think it is, I'll attend to him when I get back tonight.
They prodded the kid toward Holy George's cabin, thrust him inside, and locked the door. He stood in the darkened room and heard a gun butt thump as its owner sat down on the steps. The kid looked around him and then sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at a bearskin rug which sprawled across the floor. After the first pangs of impotent rage had abated, he got up and paced the walls, looking for a way out. The situation was not a new one to Lee Beauregard, Thompson. In his younger years, after he had disgraced himself by bulldogging a prize steer or stealing his grandfather's ammunition for practice, he had often been incarcerated in various ranch buildings, and he had become accomplished in the science of escape. Even now, with leaden death waiting for him, he could not help but hear the echo of his stern grandfather's voice saying,
Lee, if you don't watch yourself, you'll grow up just like your father.
He knew his father would not have given up so easily. The window at the back of the cabin was shuttered tightly. After a long study, he found a knot hole near the middle, and he went to work quietly punching it out. That done, he started the lengthy task of dislodging the outside bar with a nail he had dug out with his fingers and bent with his heel. He heard Holy George's Mustang being led up, and he heard the saddle creak as Holy George mounted. The kid shoved the shutters out into the dusk, looked around, and carefully lowered himself to the ground. Boots pounded on the other side of the building. The kid looked around him and dashed the width of the cabin. He turned and sprinted toward the corral. Behind him, another puncher came into sight. The kid flung open the gate just as a shot screamed over his head away from the corral post. The horses within reared and started to mill. One found the opening and dashed forth. The kid caught his mane and heaved himself up on the Mustang's back. Men were running toward him, firing as they came. The frightened horse streaked down the dry creek bed. The kid set a warning shot back at the buildings. One Winchester bullet clipped earth under the hammering hooves, and then the ranch was lost to sight. The kid turned his face toward Wolf River and drummed his heels into the Mustang's stretching flanks. And now, a final word from our show's sponsor.
Say, partner, does your smile lack sparkle? Does your breath make horses file complaints? Then try Dynamite Tooth Powder, the frontier dental discovery with grit, gumption, and just a hint of danger. Made from mint, minerals, a dab of dynamite, and our secret polishing compound, which our lawyers assure us is probably just fine. Buckshot Tooth Powder scrubs your teeth till they shine like a sheriff's badge at high noon. Use Dynamite every morning for cleaner teeth, fresher breath, and the confidence to grin during a dispute involving cards, cattles, or cousins. Dynamite Tooth Powder. For a smile that says, I may be friendly, but get on my bad side and I could be explosive.
It was 9 o'clock in Wolf River. Holy George Gates walked his horse up in front of Long Henry's place and got slowly down, looking like some rusty black bird of prey, ruminating on the whereabouts of its next victim. Troopers and riders and railroad men sidestepped him. Holy George spotted a mill iron puncher.
I understand, brother, that there's going to be a hearing tomorrow.
Yep.
Said the puncher carelessly.
Old Diehard has got some kind of a loony idea about spotting the rustlers. He's trying to save his face, that's all. It won't come to nothing.
He looked closer at Holy George.
Gee, you come in to shut him up?
Thanks, brother.
The puncher moved on, and in his wake, men stopped and turned and looked at the gaunt, rusty black shadow, which was Holy George. Johnny Simmons waddled up. He was sweating, though the night was cold.
It's time you got here, but I think Diehard's run out on you. He disappeared about 7, just after he got your message, and nobody has seen him since. Maybe he's in his room at the Great Northern Hotel.
I can't let slander stand unchallenged, brother.
He stirred up a lot of talk. But if he ain't at that hearing tomorrow...
He won't be at that hearing.
Good. I'll be seeing you later.
Naturally,
said Holy George, tentatively touching his hideout. The 41 was there, as ready and waiting as an updrawn executioner's sword. The word had spread along the one street of Wolf River. White faces were turned toward Holy George, and men stopped to look at him. Belatedly, Wolf River began to remember Diehard's record, much on the order of a discussion among pallbearers around a coffin. But everybody knew that the poor old devil wouldn't have a chance. Diehard's reputation had vanished on that day when Holy George had not even shot, and the respect of the town had gone with the event. Holy George began to walk down toward the Great Northern Hotel, stiff-legged and cat-eyed, supremely confident. It would be hard to spot a target out here in the night, but Holy George thought his battleground would be a room in the hotel. He was wrong. When he was 20 paces from the corner of the hotel, Thompson stepped into shadowy view. Both men stopped, motionless. The dusty, battered hat was awry on Thompson's head. The vest flapped a little in the night wind. A faint glitter came from the hammer of the gun slung low on his right side. Another patch of brightness was the star upon his shirt. His shoulders were hunched forward and his arms were dangling, his head thrust forward. The boardwalk cleared suddenly, and still 20 paces apart, Thompson and Holy George stood their ground. A tight, expectant group of punchers watched from across the street.
He come out. That took nerve. He knows it's suicide.
Holy George's doleful tones rumbled in the night.
you know what I come for, Diehard.
Thompson did not speak. He stood there waiting.
You been telling the town lies about me. No man living can do that. Not even a broken down wreck like you. Are you gonna draw? Draw.
It was too dark to see Holy George's hand move. His coat whipped open and the blunt .41 was heavy in his enormous palm, slashing level for the shot. Flames streaked from Thompson's waist. Thunder slapped the rickety walls of the canyon of false fronts. Light flashed from the up-kicking single-action army. Deliberately, without waiting to see the effect of his shot, Thompson slid the gun into its holster and turned on his heel. Holy George was rocking back and forth like a tall tree in a high wind as though in amazement. Holy George started to go down, stiff and jointless. His face hit the splintery boards with a loud, mushy sound. Though face down, Holy George was laid out for a pious funeral. Across the street, the pop-eyed crowd stared at the fallen body. Hurriedly, they tried to remember the things they had said to taunt Diehard Thompson, and remembering, shivered respectfully. One puncher took off his hat and held it against his chest. Johnny Simmons quaked. As soon as his legs were steady enough to support him, he wobbled down the walk to Holy George's horse and crawled urgently into the saddle. The quirt popped as he brought it down. With a speed which matched his fear and violence, Johnny Simmons sped out of Wolf River toward the Canadian border and possible safety. When he looked back, Holy George was still staring straight down at the planks with wide, glassy eyes. Thompson walked up the creaking steps of the Great Northern Hotel and entered the first room on his right. He crossed briskly and turned up the light. He took off his father's limp and dusty hat and threw it down. He shed his father's vest and star. Lee Beauregard Thompson turned and looked at Diehard, trussed up like a hog for market on the sagging bed.
He's dead,
said the kid, taking the gag out of Diehard's mouth and slitting the ropes.
and Johnny Simmons just rolled out of Wolf River forever. And with me as deputy, everything will run smooth as silk.
But Diehard did not know the whole of it. He sat up, his seamed face scarlet with anger, his old bones fairly rattled under the ferocity of his rage.
Damn you! You can't do this to me. This is my fight. Do you think I want to go through the rest of my life knowing that some punk kid had to come up here and fight my battles for me? Do you think I want to know during the rest of my life I can't pull my own gun? I'd rather have gone out there and taken my medicine. Damn you for a meddling young punk.
The kid stood back and smiled a little.
There's only one thing you don't know, sir. One thing which makes it all right.
Nothing could make it all right.
I'm your son.
Old Diehard gaped. His faded eyes stared. And then, little by little, astonishment left him, and he sat slowly back on the bed. He began to swell with pride.